Hey, Calvary families and Calvary kids. Well, here we go with week number 4. We learned last week of the Exodus story and the amazing power of God to save his people. So you would think this week we're going to hear all about the joy and the wonderful things that the Israelites do, right? Of course that's what's going to happen. Well, hang on. Maybe not quite. Today we hear about the ways that the Israelites wandered in the wilderness after their great escape from Egypt by the power of God. Let's tune in and hear. This is manna, quail, and the water from our Spark Children's Bible. God loved the Israelites, and God loved their leader Moses. God promised to bring the people to a place where they can build homes and live happy. They had never lived outside of slavery in Egypt, so they were kind of afraid. They didn't know what it meant to trust God. But God went with them and walked along, and as far as God could go, God promised to take them to the special place. But traveling was hard. It was tiring. This was a big group of people going a long ways. Along the way, the people became hungry. They complained to Moses. "We're so hungry," one boy cried out. All of a sudden, someone said, "I wish I could go back to Egypt. At least there we had food." This hurt Moses, and this hurt God. The people missed their food and their regular schedules, but they didn't understand or trust that God was taking them to a place that was better. God heard the people complaining. That evening, something very strange happened. Tiny birds called quail started to appear everywhere. God sent the quail so the people could eat. Then the next morning, something even stranger happened. The ground glistened with something that looked like dew. But even after the sun dried up the dew, there was still something on the ground. It looked like bread that had rained down from heaven. In fact, that's what it was. It was what we call manna. The manna looked like tiny seeds and tasted like bread. The people ate and ate. Every single day, God sent manna and quails, so the people had food to eat. The Israelites kept traveling toward the place that God had promised, but soon they ran out of water. Even though God had given them food, the people still complained. "Oh, it's hot out here. This is a desert. I'm hot and tired and I'm thirsty." The people cried out and complained again to God. This time God told Moses to hit a rock with that staff of his. And when Moses hit the rock, water gushed out of the rock. God gave food and God gave water to the Israelites each and every day. God took care of the people, just like he promised. What is something that you cry out for a lot? What is something that you desire to have? You would think that the Israelites saw the power of God in Israel, in Egypt, and in the Exodus. But they still had daily needs. They still had desires and wants, even bread and water. But God always provides for his people. God always sustains his people. God is always with and hears his people. Let's watch this.
The Israelites were spread across the desert, setting up tents, preparing food, and beginning to grumble. Forward they marched. Ahead of them, they faced a long and difficult journey across a desert, through dangerous territory, but they were bound for the promised land. As the Israelites' food supplies started to run out, they began to fear where their provisions would come from. One of the miracles God did for the Israelites was to provide them with plenty of food. This food came from the sky, floating down every morning like heavenly snow. Manna was tasty, but the people really hungered for meat. So God sent them quail, which is kind of like a small chicken. A huge flock of these birds swooped into the Israelite camp, and the people started grabbing them. There was so much food that everyone had buckets of quail to himself. Water was another problem. They needed water to survive. One time, God simply told Moses to touch a rock with his staff. Instead, Moses was so angry with the complaining Israelites that he not only hit the rock, but he did it twice. When he did so, water gushed out, providing a river of clean, pure, refreshing water for the whole nation to drink. God's guidance and protection resided with the Israelites, and he gave them victory. On one occasion, Moses saw that when he had his arm raised, the Israelites started winning. But when he lowered his arm, the enemy gained. So, with the help of 2 other men, Moses kept both his arms raised until Israel won the victory. Traveling this long through the wilderness brought a lot of problems. Often the people grumbled against God and Moses. God punished the people by sending a swarm of poisonous snakes, which bit the people and made them sick. But even when he had to punish them, God was merciful. He told Moses to make a snake statue. Anyone who looked at the snake statue would be healed. There were a lot of lessons that God's people had to learn. Through all this, God still loved them. He always gave them enough food, enough water, and even kept their shoes and clothes from wearing out during the long and difficult journey. They would continue to wander through the wilderness for 40 years.
Can you imagine being in the wilderness for 40 years? That had to be difficult. And the people felt the pressure that brought. But God continued to stay with them. And even sometimes the people disobeyed God. And even today we still disobey God. But God always loves his people. And God asks us to follow him, to obey him, to trust him. To trust that he is good, that he loves us, and that he's always with us. During their stay in the wilderness, the people stayed in tents. And so an activity this week is maybe that you would want to build with a deck of cards a tent or a camp. So I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you take a deck of cards and then you set them up in certain ways and see if you can build a big building with just cards. But be careful, they'll fall down quite a bit. Also check out our KidMin page for lots of coloring activities, for different pages, and also for some more fun games and activities as a family to do. Let's check out our memory verse, our big idea, and let's pray our closing prayer together.